I request Mr. Sumant Sarthi Sharma, who is presently heading our School of Philosophy and Culture at Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, to offer formal welcome to all the guests and participants. Sumant Sharma.
Thank you, Dr. Tewari. It is basically an honor as well as a privilege to host Professor Gokhale on this meet. We have already been in touch, and all our faculty members have contributed to EPG Pathshala. And I must say, before I go for a formal welcome, that he is not only a very distinguished professor and a learned scholar, but is also having great managerial skills to get all the publications from all the people who have contributed at that point of time and have made videos which are already available on YouTube and other platforms. First and foremost, I will like to welcome Professor Gokhale to this meet, and we are really honored, sir, with your presence over for today's meet. A small introductory note I would like to give to all our participants and all those people who have joined us, both from inside the university as well as from other places. I welcome them all. A short intro will be that Professor Gokhale is basically an honorary adjunct professor in the Department of Philosophy and Pali at Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune in India. And he has 31 years of postgraduate teaching and research experience at Savitribai Phule Pune University, and was also Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Research Professor at the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath, Varanasi, for 6 years. He has written in diverse areas such as Indian epistemology and logic, schools of classic Indian philosophy such as Buddhism, Lokayat, Yoga, and Jainism, Indian moral philosophy, social philosophy, Indian philosophy of religion, and contemporary Buddhism. His research interests have focused on the interface between orthodox and heterodox Indian thought, including the distinguishing in between the Nyaya and the Buddhist logical thought. With these words, I will like to hand over the proceedings to Dr. Tewari, who will in fact introduce Professor Gokhale even in a better way. And I hope that this discussion will be very interesting and a learning experience for all of us. Dr. Tewari.
Thank you, Sumanta. This is honor, in fact, to welcome Professor Pradeep Gokhale. As you rightly mentioned, he has not only a very acute scholarship and academic temperament, but also good managerial skill. He made us work, in fact, for those articles. We are, in fact, defaulters in some sense. So with the frequent reminders, we worked, and it was thanks to his encouragement we could work with him for EPG Pathshala, and it was such a timely initiative, I must say, of UGC. I don't know if there was any kind of intuition that Corona is going to happen, and this online material was prepared, and it is helping in a great way to all PG students across the country and also abroad, in fact. So I extend heartiest welcome to Professor Gokhale, and there are many friends, Amitabh Dwivedi, Rashi, Madam, Madhu, they are with us. We have our student also with us. Then after a long time, in fact, we are connected online. Professor Vishwanath Swain, who is professor in Indian Institute of Management in Indore. So welcome, Vishwanath. It was nice that we recall your presence in IIT Kanpur when we were doing PhD. And it's nice to see you again here. And Virenji has joined, so I extend heartiest welcome to all of you. And then we have Muhammad Iqbal, who told me that he was your student, Professor Gokhale, in Pune, I think, Muhammad Iqbal. He is with us from Srinagar. He is a teacher in a college. And we have our PhD student, Ajay Sharma. So So I extend heartiest welcome, Ajay. And I hope in between there may be many participants joining. Many people are facing some power issues. Despite all these issues, let me just tell something about the study circle which we are running at School of Philosophy and Culture in Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University. This study circle is sponsored by the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, New Delhi, and we are thankful to the council for this honor given to us to run the study circle at our place. And the purpose of the study circle is to popularize the discussions of philosophy in the region. So we hope that with this initiative, we will be successful in making some kind of impact on particularly Jammu and Kashmir region, where philosophy is not seen in a very great way as of now, despite all our efforts. And we hope that with our persistent effort, there will be some effect. And today's program is certainly going to be one of the main contributions towards this objective. We have specified a purpose for the study circle at our place, and the purpose is to empower the people in terms of epistemological and spiritual growth. So that is the main theme which we propose to ICPR New Delhi, and against which we got this study circle here. The epistemological and spiritual empowerment needs some kind of explanation on our part. In fact, what we intend to do under this theme, what we intend through this project, what we call epistemological and spiritual empowerment of people, we wish to develop the habit of rational deliberations by using conceptual resources available in different systems of Indian philosophy. So this is the first objective, which we call epistemological empowerment. And the second objective, which we have integral to this, that is spiritual empowerment. And here we wish to provide and facilitate the ways and means of the systems of philosophy, particularly the yoga philosophy, for physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So with this very ambitious plan, we wish to push this particular project at our place. And I am glad that Professor Gokhale could contribute in a very significant way to the scholarship of yoga philosophy through his book, which is titled The YOGASÜTRA of PATANJALI, and subtitle is A New Introduction to the Buddhist Roots of the Yoga Systems. This book is published from Routledge, New York and London office in 2020. So last year the book was published. And I am glad and thankful to Professor Gokhale that he agreed to conduct a discussion on his book in this session. As you are familiar, Professor Gokhale has expertise in different areas of Indian philosophy, particularly in the heterodox systems of Indian philosophy. He is one of the leading thinkers of our country. He could synthesize his expertise of both these systems, orthodox as well as heterodox system, in his book. And this is a great contribution, I must say, to the present scholarship. He has written an introduction to this book in 18 pages in the beginning, and then he commented on the YOGASÜTRA of Patanjali by following the scheme of chapterization of the YOGASÜTRA. So as we are familiar that the YOGASÜTRA of Patanjali has 4 chapters which are called Pada. The first is the Samadhi Pada, second is the Sadhana Pada, third is the Vibhuti Pada, and fourth is the Kaivalya Pada. And in around 170 pages, Professor Gokhale translated these sutras and made a very beautiful commentary by way of showing the relationship between the Patanjali Yoga Sutra and the Buddhist concepts like samsara, avidya, abhinivesh, maitri, karuna, mudita, upeksha. These are the Buddhist concepts which figure, and there are many more. In fact, he has very beautifully illustrated his proposal that there are significant substantial impacts of the Buddhist thinking on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. I must say that if we look at the sutra literature of the Indian philosophical systems, particularly the 6 or Sad Darshanas, among all these sutras, the Nyaya Sutra of Gautama, the Vaisheshika Sutra of Kanada, the Sankhya Sutra of Kapila, the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the Mimamsa Sutra of Jaimini, and the Vedanta Sutra of Badarayan, the Yoga Sutra is the shortest one. It has, as per one counting which Professor Gokhale followed, 195 sutras in the Yoga Sutra. I calculated from another source, there are 194 sutras in the Yoga Sutra, and the variation is in the third, in fact, pada, that is Vibhuti Pada. Professor Gokhale counted 55 sutra, and I found in another source only 54. So only one sutra difference. I don't know which sutra is not there in the source in which I looked at. Doesn't matter, but interesting point I see here is that despite its short length among all the sutra literature, it has greatest impact and relevance for our life. It doesn't mean that the other sutras are not that significant. They all are significant in their own ways, but the sutra which is directly connected to common uses, in fact, whether a person is a scholar or a layman, doesn't matter. The proposals of the sutras are directly relevant to our day-to-day life. And here, Professor Gokhale very beautifully and in a very provocative manner, I must say, said that the popular beliefs related to the Patanjali Sutra is highly misleading. He has pointed out that the deviations which we find in the common beliefs is a wrong identification of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Yoga basically, with Hatha Yoga. And then another misidentification which is normally seen in the common belief is its identification with non-dualistic tradition. And then he made right remark, I think, that so far in the scholarship, there is a kind of neglect related to the influences of heterodox systems on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. If we look at the background of the yoga tradition, there we find clearly two basic divisions. One we call Hatha Yoga, and the other is called Raja Yoga. Now, in one place I found that Hatha Yoga is the practice which is more relevant to those who are fully engrossed in sensory pleasure, or they have some kind of asanyama in their sensory gratifications. And therefore, Hatha Yoga is a direct prescription to all such minds where asanyama is in a great way. And then Raja Yoga is prescribed for those who have, of course, mental asanyama, and therefore mental regulation, mental discipline is required. So Raja Yoga is considered to be that kind of approach which is relevant for the people who are mentally, let us say, unsettled or maybe little disturbed. So here I can remind of all of you related to the contribution of the Bhagavad Gita, where we find a prevalence of Raja Yoga, in fact, in a great way. Professor Gokhale again very rightly remarks that the Patanjali Yoga Sutra has utilized the concepts basically from the Sankhya philosophy, and it has also received many concepts and great influence from the Jaina and Buddhist tradition. What Professor Gokhale does in his book on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, he tries to figure out the influences of the Abhidhamma Buddhism of Vasubandhu and early Yogachar influence of early Yogachar of Asanga's influence on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. I have little doubt here. As far I remember, Abhidhamma Buddhism is coming from the Asanga's viewpoint, and the early Yogachar, in fact, Vasubandhu is believed to be the initiator of the Yogachar tradition in Buddhism. So I don't know if it's just crisscrossing, or there may be some point. Professor Gokhale will clarify it. So he has beautifully commented on each of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra and very meticulously pointed out the Abhidhamma influence on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and the Yogachar idealist viewpoint on the Yoga Sutras. And another interesting thing which he considers is the timing of Maharshi Patanjali. Now, I don't know, with the popularization of Patanjali brand in India today, maybe after 1,000 years or so, some people may start thinking that Patanjali was a great businessman. I don't know. Professor Gokhale places Patanjali in 4th century, and that is the time when Asanga and Vasubandhu, and I believe they were brothers. So Patanjali is located in the time of Asanga and Vasubandhu in the 4th century. If we see the common belief in the Sutra literature, we find that from 2nd century BC up to 2nd century AD, all the prominent Sutra literatures were produced or composed. Now, this is again a popular and commonly acceptable position. And therefore, normally we find Patanjali is placed in the 2nd century BC or maybe 1st century, not later than that. Some scholars, which Professor Gokhale referred to, certainly argued, and Professor Gokhale favors the viewpoint to place Patanjali in the 4th century. 325 to 425 Common Era CE. And with this historical location, we find several questions emerging. Professor Gokhale questions Patanjali's identification with, in fact, the author of Yoga Sutra, and then Mahabhasya, that is a commentary on Panini's Ashtadhyayi, and then his book on Ayurveda. I think it is called Charak Samhita or Charak, I'm forgetting exactly the title, but that is a tentative. In fact, people say that he has authored all these three texts, Yoga Sutra, Mahabhasya, and Charak Samhita, let us say, to help the people to purify their mind, their speech, and their body. And therefore, we find a very famous Ayurveda mantra, normally it is called, where Patanjali is recognized as the author of all these three, and they have great relevance for our, what we say, manasa, vacha, karmana life, right? But then the question is raised whether it could be the same person, Patanjali, who is the author of all these three texts. Similarly, another viewpoint which is again debatable is the identification of Badarayana Muni, who is the composer or author of the Vedanta Sutra, which is also called Brahma Sutra, and Vedavyasa. So we have debate whether they are the same person or different person. And there is a Bhashya commentary on the Yoga Sutra which is attributed to Vedavyasa. Now, if we consider Vedavyasa being the commentator on the Yoga Sutra and also the composer on the Vedanta Sutra, and there is no much difficulty in placing Badarayan in 2nd century BCE. There are evidences, convincing evidences for that. And if we say that Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is commented upon by Vedavyasa, and Vedavyasa is located in 2nd century BC, then it would be very difficult to place Patanjali after Vedavyasa in 4th century Common Era. So there may be some response coming from Professor Gokhale on this part. And then if we look at the Buddhist influences, which he very meticulously points out in the commentary of every sutra across all these 4 chapters. And not only that, he has provided good length appendices. In fact, I think 3 or 4, I just missed the point, the number. And there he has very beautifully enumerated the concepts which are directly relevant to the Buddhist meditational practices and how they are also found in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So I have one observation on this, that if we look at the yoga tradition, generally it is believed that this tradition is initiated by Hiranyagarbha, and this concept we find in the Vedic tradition. And I don't think Professor contests on this part that yoga tradition is of course older than these sutras, Yoga Sutra, or even Buddhist tradition. The yoga tradition is much more older than all these compositions or different adaptations of the practices. And therefore, it is also seen that the concepts which Professor Gokhale considers as the concepts of the Buddhist tradition entering into the Patanjali Yoga Sutra may be the concepts which were already prevalent in the yoga tradition. Now, if we consider this, then one may easily say that the Buddhists as well as the Patanjali Yoga Sutra both are influenced by the already available concepts in the Indian tradition. And therefore, it requires a kind of qualification to suggest that the Patanjali Yoga Sutra is taking concepts from the Buddhist tradition. There is a justification for that, because once we have different traditions flourishing in the same time, and given the dialogical temperament of Indian thinkers, they were all familiar with each other, what the thinking was going on in one location. In fact, I see there were only two kinds of conferences used to be held in Indian tradition. The conferences which were relevant to spiritual growth, we find they present right from the beginning, if we say, from the Vedic period. And the second kind of conferences were connected to basically the Ayurveda or medicine, practices of medicine. So for spiritual growth, we find the conferences, we can say that it is integral to Indian tradition to have conferences on spiritual matters and also the matters which are relevant for our physical well-being. So for both physical as well as spiritual well-being, we find the practice of conferences in the Indian tradition. Now, this justifies that it's not wonder that the scholars or the rishis were familiar with what is going on in different camps. And therefore, it's a good observation by Professor Gokhale that the concepts which were readily available, which were made readily available to the common population through common language by the Buddhist thinkers, Patanjali came to know about all these. And then it is also noticeable that the discussions which were relevant to Ayurveda literature, there we find that only a kind of lip service is given to the concept of Atman or Purusha or any such spiritual elements. And then you find very quickly a switch over by all the Ayurveda literature to the functioning of our mind, buddhi, and then all different physiochemical activities in our body, because their ultimate objective was to facilitate physical well-being. And if we look at the Sankhya proposal, in fact, whole of our physical presence, including buddhi and manas, belongs to this physical realm, that is Prakriti. Now, if all these things which are utilized, all the concepts which are utilized by the YOGASUTRA of Patanjali belong to the physical reality of our being, then of course it is significant to see a relationship between the Buddhist thinking, which does not recognize any spiritual element, unchanging spiritual element. Each and everything is changing, including manas, buddhi, ego, etc. And if we consider that it is a continuous change in the whole of mental and physical being of our existence, then Patanjali is quite right in pointing it out through different ways in his Yoga Sutra. And therefore, it would again be a difficulty to attribute directly this metaphysics of change, which is drawn from the Buddhist tradition. And therefore, this will again go against the proposal which Professor Gokhale is making through his book. So these are some of the curiosities which I have in my mind, and I believe that Professor Gokhale will certainly clarify certain doubts. Here in fact, stop. I have taken much time what I expected to take. So with these words, may I now request Professor Gokhale to have some observations on my curiosities and some clarifications. But before that, it would be nice if you have some words regarding your initial proposal behind writing this book. And then after your response, we will go to Dr. Madhu Mangal, who will be making certain points again, and then we will expect your response on his remarks also. So may I request Professor Gokhale to just say a few words regarding his books and his book, and also the questions which I have in my mind. Professor Gokhale, please. And I hope the participants will keep on noting down their own observations and curiosities. So we will have time to hear questions and responses from Professor Gokhale. Sir, please.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Anil. This particular book was a result of an ongoing process. When I was teaching at in MA, YOGASÜTRA to MA students, while reading the text, I have found that many concepts, many words, which are not originally in Sankhya and elsewhere, but they are in Buddhism, they are occurring in YOGASÜTRA. So it is quite possible that YOGASÜTRA is influenced by some Buddhist background. And I came across a translation of Lavale Poussin's French article, which I got translated from my friend into Marathi, actually, not in English also. And then my belief was strengthened by many references he pointed out. And somehow I got an index, because of my friend, Professor Bahulkar, Shrikant Bahulkar, I got an index of the Abhidharma Kosha Bhashya, the word index. So I just did this exercise of finding out the words from YOGASÜTRA and sometimes Yoga Bhashya in that index. And I found that so many ideas which are there in YOGASÜTRA are found in a more, you can say, clearer form in Abhidharma Kosha Bhashya. That means that which I earlier thought that all these must be Patanjali's own, if they are not found elsewhere in the background literature, for example, in Upanishads or Sankhya, then it must be Patanjali's own invention, his own contribution. But then I found that no, it may not be his contribution. He must have taken many things from the Buddhist background. Later on, I thought that instead of just writing an article, earlier I wrote a few articles of that type, indicating how YOGASÜTRA can be regarded as an interplay of Sankhya and Buddhism. I thought that if I am finding Buddhist references for so many sutras, then why not write it in the commentarial form, that you take each sutra and if it has some connection with Buddhism, let me point it out. And now Buddhism means it could be Pali Buddhism, it could be all sorts of texts in Buddhism. And since scholars had pointed out, now this history and this type of chronology and Indology is not my region as such, but scholars have mainly pointed out that since in the 4th chapter of YOGASÜTRA, there is a refutation, there is an attempt to refute the mind-only thesis of Yogacara. And since this particular thesis arises in later Buddhism and not, say, early Pali Buddhism. Secondly, since there are certain references to this Sarvastivada, whether only present exists or future also exists, and how to understand parinama or transformation, and then various theories concerning transformation. These references are found in Sarvastivada, and these are found in this Vasubandhu's Abhidharma Kosha Bhashya. So it is possible that there must have been some kind of debate between Sankhya and Vasubandhu. So Vasubandhu tries to refute Sankhya, and then there is an answer from Sankhya and yoga thinkers to Vasubandhu. So in this process, Patanjali is in a way trying to answer sometimes Vasubandhu. Particularly, I mean, Buddhists say that actually dharmi does not exist, only dharmas exist. This is one of the important theses. So whereas Patanjali tries to hold a view that no, dharmi is there and there are dharmas may go on changing, but dharmi remains. So this kind of, I mean, again, this important debate on eternality, non-eternality. That is when Buddhists are saying that all Sanskrita dharmas are always changing and they are momentary. Here, Patanjali he does not accept that because he accepts some kind of eternality as accepted in Sankhya system. Even Kutastha Nityata, not just Parinami Nityata, but also Kutastha Nityata of Purusha, he is accepting, and that is reflected in Yoga Sutra, that at metaphysical level there is a kind of disagreement with Sankhya, but at the practical empirical level, so many ideas related to meditation which are provided by Buddhist Abhidharma texts and also Yogacara texts. This, I mean, here Yogacara, I am talking about Yogacara Bhumi of Asanga, and I have tried to argue in the book that through Yogacara system, actually Buddhists were, I mean, there was certainly yoga background. I mean, yoga, there was yoga before Buddhism, as Anil has pointed out, yes. In Upanishads, there are references to yoga, but there is, I mean, Buddha took some elements of yoga, and there are references in Pali literature also that he took some training from Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta, who were yoga teachers, and he learned some stages in meditation from them, but then he thought them to be unsatisfactory, and then he presented his advanced theory. And also he introduced what can be called Vipassana type of meditation, which was not present because Vipassana basically is based on some kind of non-eternality thesis, whereas the type of meditation that was, I mean, what is called Shamatha meditation, there some kind of stability. The object of meditation is stable, my mind is concentrating on that object, so that it starts with dharana, fixing the mind on that object, and then gradually through concentration acquiring control over other things, control over senses, and developing a kind of insight into the true nature of things. So that is based on Shamatha meditation, and Buddha learned Shamatha meditation and also took some steps ahead. For example, after Rupa Dhyana and Arupa Dhyana, which I have tried to assimilate with Samprajñāta Samadhi and Asamprajñāta Samadhi, but Buddha thought that there is something beyond, and then he talked about Saujñā Vedayutta Nirodha, so cessation of Saujñā and Vedana. That is the highest stage insofar as what you can Shamatha meditation is concerned. So this was his advancement over that. And then all these things are recorded, I mean, later on developed after Buddha and recorded in Abhidharma literature. And now on that background, I think that Asanga, through his work called Yogachara Bhumi, claim that actually, in Buddhism, we have yoga, and achara based on yoga. So that is the Yogachara thesis that Asanga tried to present. And so in a way, this was the Buddhist response to yogic tradition. And then we have further development in Vasubandhu. So although, Vasubandhu, Asanga also wrote on Abhidharma Samuchaya, for example, but he is mainly an exponent of Yogachara system, and I have tried to argue that both these. Now the point is that my utmost minimum claim is that that the Buddhism influenced Patanjali Yoga or not. For understanding Patanjali Yoga clearly, understanding Buddhist background is very useful and necessary. Because many of these terms, what has been done so far is that completely neglect this Buddhist background and claim that everything in Patanjali Yoga either is based on Upanishads or Vedas in general or Upanishads, or already there was some yoga system, or after all was a Rishi, and being a Rishi he was omniscient and he has presented his on his own. So there is no question of trace the background outside. I am suggesting that that is basically wrong. In order to understand Yoga Sutra, reference to heterodox tradition is important. Maybe ultimately you may say that even Buddhism is based on Vedas. Buddha did not say anything, whatever. All claims are made. At present, I don't want to talk about that. I want to say that whether it is directly from Vedas, or you may say that it is via Buddha, it has come to. So minimal claim, I'm just saying that this is my minimal claim. In addition, of course, I do want to say that some the many details which Buddhism has introduced in the theory of meditation, which we can find in the texts like Abhidharma Kosha and Shravaka Bhumi. Particularly, I found that in Shravaka Bhumi, that is Yogachara Bhumi is a large text, and in that there is Bodhisattva Bhumi, Shravaka Bhumi, and many such chapters. And he has, in Bodhisattva Bhumi, there that is written mainly from Mahayana point of view, where you get these various bhumis that a Bodhisattva say crosses, and ultimately he goes to that bhumi called Dharma Megha Samadhi, Dharma Megha Bhumi. And that is reflected in Dharma Megha Samadhi of Patanjali Yoga in the last few sutras. But in Shravaka Bhumi, Asanga writes mainly from Shravakayana point of view. He does not write from Mahayana point of view, but what is called Shravakayana or Hinayana. From that point of view, he elaborates on the method of meditation and many other points. So I found that many ideas can be traced to these two texts, and that is what I have tried to do. Now, so I have talked about the possible chronology. That is the basis of many scholars to claim that it must be 4th century. Why? Because many, in Yoga Sutra, there are references to Yogachara Buddhism, and there is an attempt to refute mind only thesis, and also there are references to other Buddhist ideas. So Yogachara idea or Abhidharma idea. So this is one thing. Then I think I have
Yes, sir.
the queries.
Yes, sir. So we can now hear Dr. Madhu Mangal Chaturvedi, and then we would like to have your remarks, and then it will be open for other participants for discussion.
Okay.
So Dr. Madhu Mangal Chaturvedi, please.
Good afternoon, sir, and all those present here. So, although I am a sort of, I had some, what should I say, acquaintance with Professor Gokhale, but it was never a direct face to face. But we communicated on email while we were writing. In the beginning, it was pointed out that we were writing the EPG Pathshala lectures. So somehow I also got the opportunity to contribute to one. And Professor Gokhale's, I think, the compassionate approach made it possible to finish the article as well as improve its quality. So we'll always be thankful for his trust and support. So definitely there is no doubt about the scholarship of Professor Gokhale. And the problem with the people like me is that who are neither here nor there, in the sense that I'm neither rooted in Sanskrit tradition of texts, philosophy texts written in Sanskrit, neither or nor I am in the Buddhist tradition, Pali or original. Forget about original. In fact, forget about original. I'm not even rooted in any even translation based. So not much footing in any of the traditions. And so to comment basically is too much. I mean, it's an exaggeration that I'm going to comment on the book, because even to write such a book, you require a good amount of knowledge and expertise, even minimum, if the minimum to say, to start with whatever minimum the amount is in this context is still huge, because you have to be aware with Yoga Sutra in itself, and then Buddhism, it's a vast literature. Even if you stop at the, where the chronologically, I mean, where they are contemporaries, I mean, Yoga Sutra and the Buddhist contemporaries, whatever date we follow. So that is one point. So that is a submission and admission that it is more of exploratory comments that I'm going to make. And an interesting thing that I found out is that there is similarity in how I am also getting into Yoga Sutra is also because I'm started teaching a course in Yoga Sutra this semester, and then only I sort of seriously started reading it a little more. Otherwise, my knowledge of Yoga Sutra was the only first two sutras, the Yoga Anushasanam and Yoga Chitta Nirodhan, and neither here nor there. So you can understand that ours is going to be whatever, even questions may be mistaken that I'm going to ask, because even asking questions about such profound work, which compares and shows that for clarity of either the tradition, we need to have such kind of comparative study, where it is idea is to seek more clarification of either of the views. And if you set aside the dispute or controversies related to the dating or locating the historic in history, wherever, because it is easy that if you can say that X was prior to Y and Y is, and if you are clear, so we know that whatever Y is saying, that definitely must have built upon the insights or whatever they got from X. And if X happened to be a sutra literature, which was supposed to be a mnemonic device, and then it was supposed to be studied under a master. And if you have lost touch with the master, there's no way you can revive the tradition. So the commentaries were written, but then if commentaries are written too late or in between commentaries are lost, we have lost a lot of sort of wealth of knowledge and connection anyways. And in Indian tradition, which God knows, as Edwin Brandt, who has also translated and written the book on Patanjali Yoga Sutra, points out that maybe some manuscript connecting certain points and certain explanations, historical importance, might be lying somewhere in the underground of some temple somewhere in some village. So we would not never know. Now the point coming to the book is obviously it's as it's clear, it's about comparison between what are the sources, seems to be more elaborate sources of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. But it is clear that Patanjali himself does not really claim to be the originator of Yoga Sutra. He simply says Ati Yoga Anushasanam, where the people have the commentary, Vyasa commentary itself it says that it should be taken as a beginning. I mean, Ath is also not in Tattva Vaishardi, we find that Ath is not to be understood the way the Shankaracharya's commentary interprets Atha, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. So Ath is more of a sort of something like, or it is what we call it. There is a word. I have too many documents open here, so just give me a second. So it is for what is the beginning for the right? ये उसके लिए विघ्नाश के लिए है, something like that. More it's auspicious beginning, so to say. Then it is yoga anushasana again. It is also anushasana is anushashyate vyakhyayate lakshana bhedopaya phalayer yena tad anushasana. So that which is used to anushasana is something which is also used for through which a student is taught, and then there is explanation is given, and there are lakshanas, or and the differences, and all these that which tells about, I think, the system, about the fruits, what is the end result of particular system or knowledge and process, and whatever what means does it offer to what result is in total. And he says that, of course, Shastram Adhikritam Veditavyam, so Yog Shastra ka arambha samajhna chahiye. This is what it is. Then there is the real thing that he defines yoga as samadhi in his commentary. Although in the second sutra, Patanjali originally then himself defines as yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Now the professors pointed out the chitta itself is a very concept which is very much found in more detailed discussion on which is found in Vasubandhu's work and classification, at least that we have time to got. So maybe I'm not also able to represent whatever the professor has talked about in the book, because you have to read the book, because it's not possible to gather all so much. And there's also a lot of, it's not so easy to understand all those concepts in such a short time. One reads so many readings of the book. So one question came to my mind related to that was that, is it really a matter of ontological, something that empirical, psychologically, that there are chittas, different chittas. So is it that, and this is again commentary. So if Vyasa is later, then how much difference is between Vyasa and the original yoga? So this from the context, the yoga, the commentary defines 5 types of chitta, which is again based on the somehow connected to the Sankhya Guna theory, and because when you are just talking about the chitta, it is already part of Prakriti, and the professor has also pointed out in the book. So Purusha is the pure consciousness, Sankhya is already there, and the Yoga Sutra is supposed to be a process to be the cavalry of its only alone state, aloneness, in which he is not associated with Purusha, pure conscious being. The self is not associated with Prakriti, it's not multitudinous manifestation of Prakriti, which includes something that you see here, including Buddhi and Ahankara and all these sense organs and cognition, everything is part of not only what we associate with psychological life, but psychological life of my mental life is Prakriti. About true nature is Purusha. So that is there. So again, because we are as Purusha is thinking, seeing its reflection and thinking that associating with the chitta or reflection in the buddhi of all these different types of different sensory organs and sensory experiences. So based on that, your experience and state of mind are different types of chitta. So there are chitta, Mudha Vikshipta, Ekagra, and Nirodha. So Ekagra and Nirodha is obviously, Nirodha is there. All your duties again is translated as modification, something, activities in the mind. So it's we can define it as third pole. So something is going on basically in your mind. Things are changing. If you look at the 5 vrittis itself, that pramana, vidra, apramana, viparya, vikalpa, vidra, smriti. So those who commonly we can associate is vidra and smriti. So if you sleep or if you have memory, these are also modifications of the mind. So this is also kind of diluted state. So here, just one question was that it is taxonomy that we the professors provided, and I would like to just for a couple of just for the sake of the our listeners, because it is right at hand in the very initial list. So we get to subject Lina Prabhita, Pratika, Madhavad, and Uddatan Dad, or say Bhavit, Bhavit, and Mukta. These are the categories of the first one who's divided into at least of 8 times, but total 16 times. And if you remember that in the Yoga Sutra, if you read, you will find that Patanjali it is said that the very first chapter, which is Samadhi, why did Patanjali starting with Samadhi? Something if it is the first chapter, the student is being taught immediately about Samadhi. But it is said that this chapter is called Samadhi chapter. And Samadhi is one of the categories mentioned by Samadhi is which is Kushala, which is wholesome, which is good, and bad is asamaya. So is it a matter of taxonomy, or is it just really there is a real distinction of this, or it's just observing it into minute details that because Buddha and the followers are very much concerned with the mental state, the whole psychology of the human being, and a lot of focus is there. So they're paying more attention, and mind it that is in the commentary, not exactly in the Yoga Sutra, what he means with Yoga that is there. And then it is for Samadhi Chitta. So once you have Yoga Chitta, you are in Samadhi. If you, that is a simple Samadhi. Once you have Yoga Chitta, you have Samadhi Chitta. Beyond the above three, which is a hierarchical, which according to Professor, it is a Patanjali, but not in the Buddhism. Buddhism, you can crystal clear there is Kushala and Krishna, you can make a distinction of some hierarchy, but there is not much as a hierarchical distinction. But in yoga, it is because you are moving on a path, one step, each step there is, so one step is higher than the other, it's more like steps, later on. So second chapter is about the steps that you can take for those who cannot practice abhyas and vairagya. Now, interestingly, I would like to, so what about this classification? Does it have a clue? For the purpose of understanding better, of course, Buddhist literature has definitely much more to offer about Chitta. But is it really that could it be possible that it is not so serious matter for to delve deeper into the Chittas? Because he always says that the yoga that we're going to talk about is not for the Chitta. It is for the Ekagra and the Nirudha Chitta. So that is there. So they're not interested in the other chapters, so no, there's no point of elaborating on maybe that one point. I would like the professor to comment on that. Then the second thing that comes is that when he's talking about 1.32, after he talks about the Shepa, which has 9, all we can associate you all normal, not scholars, that is these. So the 9, and then there are 9 Chitta Vikshepas, and then there are complements, which are 5 look, and Shwas. So even breathing, inhaling, exhaling is also considered to be a distraction. You cannot get into Samadhi, it will be, your Chitta will be distracted, that is there. And then there is a note and the antidote to that in 1.32. So 1.30, 1.31, 1.32, 1.30, it is the Sutra of the Chitta Vikshepa. The Chitta, why people cannot practice yoga because of the Chitta Vikshepa, the sectors of the Chittas. Then there are also with the Chitta Vikshepas, there are certain components that arise in the Chitta Vikshepas. You have pain, you have dukkha, you have dharmanya, which is identified as something expected doesn't happen, or if you do not get the desired result, as one of the commentaries with the constitutions are read, you become a little bit disheartened. So that is, you become disappointed. So that is dharmanya. You think, okay, I'm not going to get off, I'm not going to achieve my goal. That state of mind. Then there is other major place, your body shaking is not stable. That is one thing, which maybe can be cured by the practice of asanas. Then there is Shwas, which is all inhalation and exhalation. That is also decided. But the Sutra text says that at 1.2, which says that as an antidote to this, he is saying that so you for to counter these, you have to concentrate, at least practice. Abhyas is part of that. Abhyas and Vairagya, through Abhyas and Vairagya is Samadhi. That is also for a very evolved mind, not ordinary mind. For ordinary mind, there is second chapter. Then in the beginning, there is the yoga. Tapa Swadhyaya Ishwar Kriya Yoga. So Kriya Yoga is different there. Which also another that people talk about Kriya Yoga tradition again, Ladi Marsh and all that. There is another tradition of that. It's space yoga because they say that that if you practice Kriya Yoga, you can say little practices, you save from the great fear of death. Something like that, that reference to that. So here the commentary is talking about the momentariness of the Buddhist position. So, but Patanjali YOGASUTRA is not talking something like that. So, that again, I would like to, again, I would not ask any question because I may put it wrong. I have not much, again, the depth background. So, I would appeal to the professor to again comment the way he thinks is different. And then I will also go on further, but then I would also be curious to know more about the pranayama that Patanjali talks about. Because sometimes people associate it with Hatha Yoga, but it seems that in Patanjali it is a specific task because it's pranayama is supposed to, because prana is prana there is definitely prana is talked about in Vedas, and the movement is prana is what causes breath, and if your prana is not balanced, the Vyam is defined as the imbalance of all kinds of sutras. Vyam is defined as imbalance of the rasas and dhatus, and of course all the so there is some kind of imbalance, and prana is one 5 pranas at least, which are the imbalance of prana, create a lot of problems, and yoga is also aimed at, because karma you have to have health. So pranayama is also a very important practice to have control over your body, your age, and time. They say Rachak and the Ramtak Yogi Ramtak talk and prana, and they say that if you time it is also connected to time. It becomes it's a universal element in everything. So if yogi controls the prana, you can control anything. And therefore, there is no miracle as such. It is pure science, if you can see that. It is the surface of the cell. And then we find also that it's mentioned about prana and detail about it in our Kashmir tradition, specifically in what is his name? So that is it. So prana seems to have a much, deeper meaning. Prana kosha we can associate. So prana, movement of prana is supposed to be something which is very key to the connection between mind and body and the self and everything, and the balance of it. So I would like to say more. Request Professor to be listening more. Then what he has to say about this notions of Ishvara and Pranama, which is of course Om has reference to in Madhu Kalika and Madhu Upanishad, where always the 3 syllables are identified with Sapna Sushupti or Yuma, if I remember correctly, and the 4th one is the Turiya. So these references we find, so there is some element there which is not seems to be not absolutely this Ishvara or Kosha concept, and as Professor pointed out, that there is this the idea that whether you believe in something permanent entity as a true essence or something we believe that your self to be changing constantly, consciousness to be more of a flow rather than a property of substance. Although again, Purusha is supposed to be pure consciousness, there's not much difference. And its difference will be kind of vikalpa. If you think that if you attribute consciousness to Purusha, you are basically committing to some kind of vikalpa, which is again a problem. Or some kind of Bhakti darshan, some kind of barrier, which image. Then I have a very political point to make, and I forget. I do not. It's not against the professor. institutions. But there is a tendency these days that I see with the rise of and the writers' force. So my point is not related to the book and the purported intention in the book, which is very scholarly. But here's also, if you would like to address this question in the political scenario, what I see is that there is also seems to be an attempt to discredit this Indian culture, especially the rightist, the Hindu rightist nationalists. Those who seem to say that there are a lot of original knowledge, and they call this, they identify with Brahmanism, call it Brahminical. And then they try to contrapose it, this Brahminical with non-Brahminical, including Buddhism, Jainism, and in fact, the free allows okay, Sufism, including Islam. So that is that they try to create this. There may be, they may not be conceptual, whether it is politically, social, whether the society was divided into such categories. It's a part of research, a lot of things. But there is this idea that academic works, these knowledge systems are also being subjected to this kind of analysis. Much more like investment theory, like you're saying that you never had anything original, whatever claim that you make about great knowledge systems, even Vedic culture, it is not sure what it is coming from. And liberals obviously are very good at, and some of them might be, the scholars are obviously right scholars, scholars. So they are writing, producing such works, but they are in between the journalists and all those intellectuals who are jumping upon such work and making, using it as their base to launch an attack on what they went identify Hindutva with Brahminical. Brahminical, Brahminical, or Hindutva knowledge system, or knowledge system, Vedic knowledge system, or Hindu knowledge system, the Brahminical system. And another recent work I saw in 2017 is Roots of Yoga. Again, similar claims are made by James Mallinson and Mark Singleton. And here, James Mallinson has got a lot of money now to study the ancient Hindu texts and for that. And he has written also books on the Shiva Samhita and the other book of friends there. So all in all, so I'm more interested in the spiritual, how if they together the YOGASUTRA and YOGASUTRA is like a notebook for the Buddhist, the entire Buddhist elaborate compendiums. It would be very good. It's more like which you can follow this sutra and then read the details in the Buddhist literature for spiritual growth. I'm more interested in that, and philosophical, of course, I'm interested in that. But it seems that we're living in a society and we are not untouched by or not affected by all these political activities and political movements and movements that are going on, which politically and ultimately socially and personally have a great impact on our current generation and present our life and the kind of life that we're going to live. So, in all, this is my submission. And I would request the professor to make it whatever, like the tradition says that whatever your question, your opponent's side, you raise the question in much more, the Purpaksha's question you raise in much more better in clear fashion and more argumentatively present his position, and then counter strong. So I would request the professor to maybe find my questions and my comments, and then in his own wisdom, what is appropriate here, can I comment and respond to those comments. Thank you very much for your patience.
I must confess for one thing that
yes, sir, please.
I could not hear
Yeah,
many of the things that he was
yes, sir.
saying. So sometimes I could make only some conjecture that probably he is talking about this, particularly the last point, the political aspect of the whole thing. I mean, what he wants to say, I could not understand. About other things also. So first, what I will do is that I will just present what I want to say about some of the points which I could understand. Okay, and then maybe he will rejoin. And make his clarifications. Mostly what Madhusudan Chaturvedi ji, Madhu Mangal Chaturvedi ji was doing. he was pointing out his understanding of the text and asking some questions about that. So about this chitta, for example, what ontological, I mean, my point was in the book is that, Sankhya has its ontology, where it talks about antahkarana, buddhi, manas, all these falling on the prakriti side, and therefore they are regarded as achetana. Whereas on the other side, there is purusha, which is regarded as chetana. Now, this particular ontological framework seems to be at the background of Yoga Sutra, but at the same time, instead of using the typically Sankhya terms, such as manas or buddhi or antahkarana, Patanjali uses the term chitta, which is the central concept of Buddhism. And there we have this idea of chitta and chetasika. So this, the idea of chetasika, which is something like the mental factors, it is close to something like chitta vritti, the mental functions. And so now in that case, what will happen is that chitta will be, chitta is conscious. In Buddhism, chitta is not unconscious, achetana, but it is very much chetana. So this is a dual influence of Buddhism and the Sankhya on Patanjali, where he tries to give a sort of phenomenological treatment. I mean, he does not talk much about ontology, although he seems to be at ultimate level, he seems to be committed to Sankhya ontology. That is ultimately, it has to be a kind of eternal state of Purusha, which can be called Kaivalya. So that is the final goal. About that, he seems to be committed, but insofar as the journey towards that state is concerned, there he is mainly guided by a phenomenological approach. That is, so chitta and phenomenological approach is closer to Buddhism, whereas Sankhya, in Sankhya we have many abstract concepts which cannot be, which are not known through experience, but there Sankhya say that it is something like samanyato drushta anumana, samanyatastu drushta atindriyanam pratikir anumanat. So such entities which are accepted, most of the entities which are accepted in Sankhya are the object of speculative metaphysics, and therefore they are not phenomenological in nature, whereas the yoga is very much experiential, practical and phenomenological area, and therefore he is perhaps using some, I mean, Patanjali is using many Buddhist concepts which are close to phenomenology. There we are not very much concerned with abstract, say, inferences of abstract entities and just believing in them and so on and so forth. Now, so this is about chitta and drashta. So on the one hand, there are chitta and chitta vrittis. Now, when we are talking about chitta vrittis, mental states, we can talk about them at two levels. One is epistemological level, and the other is psychological level. Psychomoral. I mean, at the level of moral psychology. That is, which kinds of states are good states, which are bad states of mind, which will lead to liberation and which will lead to bondage, and so on and so forth. So there, this question of klishta and aklishta. So he is presenting two levels of classification of chitta. One level is phenomenological, one is epistemological, and the other is, moral, psychological, and spiritual. So, klishta, aklishta is a different type of classification. And I think Vyasa has mixed them up when he says that Viparyaya Chitta Vritti is the same as Avidya. I think that this Avidya, concept of Avidya which occurs in Yoga Sutra is a kind of klesha, a basic klesha. And therefore it is directly related to the distinction between klishta and aklishta classification of chitta rather than fivefold chitta vritti classification. Now I would like to talk about pranayama. I have tried to argue that the concept of, the term pranayama is very much related to regulation breathing, of breathing, disciplining breathing, controlling breathing, and so on and so forth, particularly in Hatha Yoga tradition. But I have tried to suggest that the way pranayama is defined, it is closer to what is called anapanasati, that is mindful observation of breathing rather than controlling breathing. That is my claim. And there I have referred to, the definition of Shwasa Prashwasayoho Gati Vicheda Pranayama. The word Vicheda, as it is used in Patanjali elsewhere, that is, for example, the word Vichinna is used in the second chapter, where it means distinguishing. It does not mean stopping. So if Gati Vicheda really means distinct awareness of Gati, then this pranayama is not trying to control directly the breathing by stopping breathing and so on and so forth, but it is more of observing, mindfully observing breathing. And through this mindful observation of breathing, breathing naturally becomes dirgha and sukshma. So the second stage of pranayama, which is stated, is say when it dirgha and sukshma. Let me just try to open the chapter. So desha kala sankhyabihi paridrushtaha dirgha sukshmaha. So there this idea is observing while it becomes dirgha and sukshma. And again paridrushtaha, observing in all sides, from all sides, in terms of desha kala, that is its place, its time, and so on and so forth. So that is again, there I have given references from Asanga's Sravaka Bhumi, where he describes his anapanasati, and at some stage there is also something like stoppage. So Vayabhyantara Vishayakshepi Chaturthaha, it refers to something like stoppage, but that is a natural stoppage. It is not artificial stoppage of breathing. And it is a temporary state of stoppage. So all these ideas are closer to anapanasati of Buddhism. That is what I have tried to argue. Now I think, about this political thing, I think, okay, Hinduism, Brahmanism, now it is a complex tradition, and in that tradition there are all sorts of currents. So which current, even within Buddhism, within Brahmanical tradition, there are some currents of thought which are more accommodative, which are more inclusive, and there are also some currents of thought which are more exclusive. So if you follow some kind of inclusive current, then you are able to appreciate even Nastika tradition as well. And that is my general approach. Though I regard myself as something like a Charvaka Buddhist, insofar as my personal ideology is concerned, a combination of Charvaka and Buddhism. But at the level of interreligious relationship, hold the position of what I call critical egalitarianism. That is egalitarianism, that is equality of all religious approaches, where some kind of criticality should be allowed. I mean, not uncritical acceptance of equality of religions, but where the critique of religion, criticism of religion is allowed, and so that reformation of all religions is possible. So that kind of approach I have. I mean, although I have not exactly understood what were the questions and what were the observations.
In fact, sir,
Okay.
you
Yes.
made right conjectures, and you got the points which Dr. Madhu was raising.
Mhm. Okay.
And I particularly like that expression, Charvaka Buddhism. So, and that's nice to see the link.
Mhm.
You were talking about Chitta,
Mhm.
and of course, Chitta Vritti Nirodha is the most popular definition which we find in the Indian tradition, and that is in the Yoga Sutra. So, if we consider the concept Chitta, in fact, it is having different connotations, let us say, in the Sankhya Yoga tradition, the Buddhist tradition, and also in the Vedanta tradition.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, when we consider the metaphysical background of Sankhya tradition, which is, let us say, founding metaphysics of the Yoga Sutra, there we find Chitta is inclusive of what we call intellect, ego, and manas. So, if we consider these three, in buddhi, ahankar, and manas, these are recognized as different functional states in the Buddhist tradition and also in the Vedanta tradition. If we look at the Vedanta metaphysics, these are basically functional states of consciousness if we consider the Vedanta tradition. And that is called Chitta in the Buddhist tradition, with, of course, the significant difference in their basic character. So, given the Sankhya background of Chitta, and see the status of evolution of Prakriti. So here at the level of Buddhi, Ahankar, and Manas, consciousness is involved. Whether it is actually involved or phenomenally involved, we do find differences of opinion, and the Sankhya tradition clearly, or in a very intriguing sense, says that there is no actual relationship between Purusha and Prakriti. It is an apparent relationship. It appears related. Actually, it is not related. And that's the whole soteriological project. Buddhi, Ahankar, and Manas, these evolutes are basically because of some influence or some intervention, some proximity of consciousness. So consciousness is involved there. So it is not purely material domain. And even if we come to that Charvaka Buddhist background, so even if it is purely material, material is very much active in the Sankhya metaphysics, if we see. Prakriti has a continuous change, Sarup Parinam and Nirup Parinam. And it is that changing nature which finally matters when we talk of functionality of consciousness or Chitta.
No, that is okay. I mean, mind is active. Antahkarana is active, but...
Sir?
So, mind is active, but ultimately it is not conscious, and only Purusha is conscious, and Purusha does not, Purusha is aparinami, does not undergo any change whatsoever. All these ideas, personally, I don't accept, and it is
Right.
very difficult to point out that it is only reflection of consciousness, and actually conscious agent, conscious substance is different, and
Right.
due to reflection we appear to be conscious. That is, I as a person. So ultimately,
Yes.
I would start with myself as a person who is conscious, and then I mean, I have mind only in that sense that I am conscious. I am conscious of so many things. I can, that consciousness also, I can reflect on my own consciousness. So it is all these possibilities are there, and then
Yes.
because of these fluctuations and because of the attractions and temptations, there are many problems, and therefore the question of controlling the functions of consciousness and also at subconscious level, controlling myself becomes important, and therefore yoga becomes important for me.
Right.
So, and therefore when I talk about say tada drashtuh swarupe avasthanam, all such things which are based on Sankhya metaphysics, there I would say that this witness consciousness can be regarded as the function of mind itself. Why to accept? I mean, they accepted that kind of thing because basically they were believing in the possibility of eternal state of liberation. So they wanted something eternal. So the Purusha is eternal, and therefore its witness consciousness should also be eternal. Otherwise, if it is not, if it is the state of mind itself, then see, because mind is not eternal, the witness consciousness also will not be eternal, and therefore the state of liberation also will not be eternal. That was the danger that they were having. That is the kind of danger about the metaphysical concept of liberation. I mean, whether after my death I will continue to be liberated or not, that is not my worry. I mean, if that is my worry,
Yes.
then I will be concerned about something like Atman, which has to be there after my death and which has to be in the liberated state. And that is how, I mean, Videha Mukti is important for many systems of Indian philosophy. You say in Jainas would say that it is ultimately the state of Jiva in that, say at the top of Lokakasha where all those liberated jivas stay. I mean, all these systems, I mean, Vedantis will have their own understanding, and Sankhya has its own understanding, that ultimately it has to be something like eternal state of liberation after disembodied eternal state of liberation. That is, as soon as you accept that, then all these metaphysical problems arise, because you have to accept such a thing, but also you have to relate it with your practical life. It cannot be completely unrelated. So how to relate it with the transitory life, the life of bondage? At the same time, it has to be completely isolated, because if it is not isolated, then it will be polluted. But if it is isolated, then it will not be related. So it should be related with our practical life, but at the same time, it should maintain its absolute purity. That becomes, I think, a very big problem. And you are just confining yourself to this life, and in this life, you want to lead a peaceful life. So as many moments of witness consciousness as possible, but at the same time, of course, you want to participate in this life.
Yes.
And not.
Yes. This is nice observation. In fact, Radhakrishnan makes this remark in his Indian philosophy,
Okay.
that so far as our individual existence is concerned, Atman or Purusha has hardly anything to do.
I see.
So this is nice observation. Now I think this is time we can open it for questions from our audience.
Okay.
So anyone who wants to ask some curiosity related to yoga, Professor Gokhale has expertise. So any question related to yoga, meditation, or concentration, one clarification, if you sir can make for us the difference between what we call shamat dhyan and vipassana dhyan. Concentration meditation and insight meditation in the Buddhist tradition. So what is the difference between them?
I think the main difference is that you, in shamatha, you choose some object, you specify some, it can be a material object or it can be some statue or some idea of some deity, and you focus on that, concentrate on that, and gradually you internalize that concentration, and through that you experience peace of mind. Now, peace of mind, that is shama, is the goal of shamatha meditation. Whereas it may not be complete purity of mind. That is, purity means your mind may not be completely free from the kleshas, the defilements, because as soon as you come out of that samatha state and you mix up with the world, all your defilements may come to surface. So for purifying the mind, what is important is vipassana, where you are not selecting any object and you are focusing on the impermanence of everything and also soullessness of everything. And through that, you are removing attachment towards everything. So when you realize that everything is impermanent, then you get, reduce your attachment, trishna, ultimately. So through that, you purify your mind. You make your mind free from attachments. So these two practices, they regard as, say, complementary to each other. Not necessarily, I mean, they do not say that you practice only shamatha, or because vipassana has been introduced by Buddha, so practice only vipassana. That is not the case, but both the practices are supposed to be recommended. They are recommended in Buddha, complementary.
Yes.
So just one, Vishwanath also has raised a hand, which is actually, I just want to just ask, because the next point is related to this samatha and vipassana, because it is commented on 1.32 Vyasa's commentary. He's treating with this, because in 3.2 it says that you can take any object for concentration for abhyasa, for to countering the Chitta Vikshepas and the Vikshepa Anubhavas, the Sangha Anubhavas. So there it is samatha, it is it, but there in the commentary, he is taking up the Chanikavada argument against the Chanikavada. So how much should we read the view of the YOGASUTRA and the Vyasa's commentary? I mean, how much should we say that it is independently Vyasa, whoever that is, the commentator, but not the actually intention of the Patanjali, the YOGASUTRAkar, to actually point out the or counter the Shankara? And then I'm sorry for interrupting Vishwanath, Professor.
What is that? You're talking about what? Shanikavada?
What I'm saying is that YOGASUTRA, the Sutra 1.32, is not really talking about as such Shanikavada. This is the commentary that there is Shanikavada, argument against Shanikavada. So I'm saying that how should we say that faithful is the Vyasa commentary to the YOGASUTRA?
No, that is an important issue. That is, in Buddhism, when you regard everything as momentary, then the question arises whether really ekagrata is possible at all. I mean, Vasubandhu has discussed that, I mean, now their approach is that because you cannot, suppose you select any particular object and you are under the this belief that this object is momentary, every time it is changing. So how can you concentrate on that particular object? And Vyasa here is pointing out that objection, I think, that ekatattva abhyasa, that is, you have to how practicing meditation on a single tattva possible if a thing is always changing. So now, so this is a problem before Buddhists. Now Buddhists say that although the thing is changing, there can be homogeneous series. After all, everything is a part of a series. And so when we think that the thing is stable, the table before me is not changing at all. Actually, it is changing from moment to moment, although I may not realize it. So the question is, even if it is changing, if it is a homogeneous series, then we think that it is the same object. If it is heterogeneous series, then we realize the change. So
Right.
concentration on homogeneous series becomes a kind of ekagrata in Buddhist framework.
Yes, in the Vibhuti Pada, you have mentioned it when you commented on Tatra Pratyekatanata Dhyanam. So there is a Ekranata of Pratyaya because of the homogeneity of Chitta.
Yes.
So we have Sir Professor Vishwanath Swain, who is our friend from IIM Indore. He wants to ask something. Vishwanath.
Yeah. So, sir, Pranam, Vishwanath here.
Pranam.
Actually, sir, Professor Anil and Professor Madhu and Professor Sumanta are my close friends and seniors. Professor Anil and Professor Sumanta were my seniors and Madhu was my classmate.
Okay.
And I did my PhD from IIT Kanpur only.
Oh, I see.
So, sir, actually, I have one curiosity to know that you brought out that debate whether it is dharma is sacrosanct or dharmi is sacrosanct, if I understood your stance in that way. So whether dharmi, the permanence of dharmi depends on dharma, or the permanence of dharma depends on dharmi. It's like container contained kind of relationship. So, sir, what's your stance on this debate on dharma and dharmi?
I mean, I like the Buddhist approach that dharmi is a construction. It is a mental construction. Because what we come across are all phenomena, and we believe that behind those phenomena there must be something which is the bearer of those qualities. Suppose we are different qualia or qualities we come across, all they are phenomena, they are all dharmas, and their existence as such cannot be denied. That is the existence of dharmas. Of course, those dharmas are momentary, but that does not mean that at the particular time of their appearance, they are not there at all. You can say that, okay, they are there. Now, Yogacharyans would say that they are just forms of my mind only, and beyond that, they have no existence. Whereas Sautrantikas would say that, no, even those phenomena which appear in my mind or as forms of my mind are caused by something outside there. So those things, those debates are there, but again, behind those phenomena, which cause certain impressions on my mind and which I cognize, I also start thinking about the bearers or grounds of those phenomena, which I regard as dharmi, the bearers of qualities. That is a mental construction. Although there could be just combinations of such dharmas, and beyond that there may not be any dharmi, or there may be a dharmi. I am not saying that dharmi cannot exist, but insofar as our knowledge process is concerned, it is a mental construction. That is how.
Thank you so much, sir. So just in a continuation to that, who has a wonderful contribution into this debate, sir? Which school you find? Yogacharya? Yogacharya, yoga system has a good contribution to this debate. Which school I could go through so that I could have a comprehensive idea about this debate or dichotomy or something like that.
Personally, I prefer Sautrantika approach.
Okay.
Yogacharya, the external world, which I don't.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
So, any other questions from our participants? Any curiosity regarding yoga and different stages of meditation, etc.? Ajay ji, you want to ask something?
Sir, I'm highly thankful to all participants, especially Professor Gokhale. I can't say much. The only thing which I can say or share here is that it was a very enriching session, sir. I learned quite a lot from this session about the yoga philosophy and about the other schools of Indian philosophy also, because it was a comparative study, and I'm very sure that a lot of effort has gone into writing this book, and I'm no one to ask any question unless and until I actually go through this book and understand probably some parts of it. But yes, the only thing which I noticed, and it is new to my knowledge, that YOGASÜTRA is actually influenced by various other schools also, which I was not aware in past. And I'm highly thankful to you, sir, for inviting me to this session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Ajay ji. Yes, this is in fact the contribution of debate when we raise certain questions. So many new things come to our mind. And if we see the tradition of learning, it requires a continuous engagement, and that continuous engagement generates new and new questions and creates occasion for satisfaction of those questions. This point reminds me of the discussion between Lord Sri Krishna and Arjuna. So when war was over, and after several years of rule, etc., Sri Krishna and Arjuna again sat one day, and Arjuna asked that he forgot what he was taught during that Yuddha Bhumi. Then Lord Krishna says that, look, I told all those things by being situated in yoga, and therefore it is difficult for me today now to recall all those things and tell you exactly the same way. But I will be reformulating the main points in different words. And this way, he goes on recapitulating main points in Uttar Gita, what we come to know now. So this reminds me of our situation, that yes, howsoever careful we are, in time, if we don't have abhyasa and if we don't reflect, then it simply goes away from our mind. If it goes away from Lord Krishna and Arjuna's mind, then we are very today, despite all the books written on yoga and commentaries and then commentaries on commentaries, he has revived the discussion. And the main point which I see behind this book is the contribution which Buddhism made towards this yoga tradition. In fact, we are very good at making things very complex and using sophisticated terminology so that we claim a kind of expertise. And while going through this book, I realized that this is the right kind of source for today's generation, for the present generation, which is part of the mass education system. And I recommend, in fact, this book to everyone who is curious to know about the yoga philosophy and different practices, and how Buddhism made it available in a very simple, common language to the population. And this is high time, in fact, now to look into all those sources. And I think the success of this book lies in this very opportunity which it has created for engaging in the discussion in a much more fruitful and also comparative way, seeing the synthetic character of all the systems of Indian philosophy, seeing the complementarity between different systems of Indian philosophy, and learning as per our temperament, as per our convenience, and also looking for a kind of persistent growth. Yes, Iqbal ji.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Yes.
गोखले सर, गुड आफ्टरनून.
good
आई एम योर,
afternoon.
हाँ, मैं आपका स्टूडेंट हूँ. तो
Yes.
मेरे लिए खुशी की बात है, आपसे आज मुलाकात भी हो गई इसी जरिए से. तो और आपकी प्रेजेंटेशन सर बहुत अच्छी थी.
Thank you.
तो मेरे लिए आई एम टू मच इमोशनल सर दिस टाइम कि आई एम सीइंग यू आफ्टर ए लॉन्ग ब्रेक ऑफ 10 years. So सर, लिव लॉन्ग, लिव हैप्पी, बी हैप्पी. तो मेरी शुभकामनाएं आपके साथ हैं सर. थैंक यू सर.
थैंक यू इकबाल जी. बहुत ही अच्छा लगा ये जानकर कि आप प्रोफेसर गोखले से सीधे ये चीज़ें सब सीख चुके हैं. ये हमारे लिए भी बहुत ही अच्छी बात है कि आप हमसे जुड़े हैं और हमारे माध्यम से आपको ये मौका मिला प्रोफेसर गोखले को फिर से सुनने का. तो आपने ज्वाइन किया, आपका बहुत बहुत आभार. हाँ, वीरेंद्र शर्मा जी, आप कुछ.
माय प्लेजर सर, माय प्लेजर सर.
थैंक यू, थैंक यू. वीरेंद्र शर्मा जी, आप कुछ पूछना चाह रहे थे.
मैं ये जानना चाहता था कि योग की शुरुआत
Yes,
हम
please.
किस प्रकार से और किस तरीके से शुरुआत करें और अपने आप को उसको कैसे स्थापित करें अपने.
No, actually, I mean, in my case, I started with Vipassana meditation camp, for example, because there you are directly dealing with your mind, the operations of mind, because otherwise, just if you somebody asks you to meditate on something, what exactly are we doing? That becomes unclear. And first type of yogic experience, I can say I got only in Vipassana meditation camp. So, I mean, this is of course my personal experience. And about this, I mean, Ashtanga Yoga or Arya Ashtangika Marga, generally they are given in a particular order. And as if you have to attain perfection in the first step, only then you can go to the second step. I mean, I personally don't agree with this approach. Wherever it is possible, you can start from there, but ultimately you have to master all the aspects. But that does not mean that you have to start with the first step first. Because attainment, for example, first step is related to morality. So becoming absolutely moral, perfectly moral, involves attaining morality at mental level also. That is, attaining a state in which the immoral thoughts will not occur in your mind at all. Now, this particular thing is not possible without meditation, for example. It is purification of your mind. You cannot just do through Shila or through yamas. So perfection in yamas is not possible without dhyana. And you can start with dhyana and side by side also start focus on yamas. That is also possible. So, so whatever aspect you find is needed by you, maybe, I don't know. I personally don't believe in Guruism, although I had some teachers from which I learned, but I never regarded any teacher as the ultimate word or who should govern my decisions. I did not allow anyone to govern my decisions, but one can get advices, of course, and one can make use of them.
ध्यान
For
ध्यान
example,
लगाने में हमें परेशानी आती है, मन भटकता रहता है, एकाग्र नहीं हो पाता, बहुत समय लगता है, तब जाके ध्यान एकाग्र हो पाता है। तो
so I mean, that is possible. I think in Vipassana meditation technique, the first part is what is called anapanasati, concentration on breathing. And there you have to again and again come to your breathing, but not to control breathing, but to observe breathing, how it comes and goes, how in breathing and out breathing. And मन भटकता रहता है, ये तो है, फिर से उसे ब्रीदिंग पर लाना है, ऐसे वो टेक्निक है। यानी you have to be aware. I mean, don't get frustrated that, oh, my mind is wandering. Okay, it is wandering. You realize that it is wandering now, because that is the very nature of your mind to wander. So come back to concentration on breathing. That is how the first 3 days of Vipassana meditation camp, I mean, they say that it is minimally 10 days camp you have to complete, and in that first 3 days are only concentration on breathing, then concentration on sensations all over your body, which is called Vedananupassana, that is Vedana is sensations. So it is very much related to what is called mindfulness meditation. Satipatthana, in this tradition it is called Satipatthana, and there are texts in Pali on that. The Satipatthana Sutta, Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So concentration on body, functions of body, concentration means not fixing the mind there, because the mind also travels from place to place and observes how the things are changing and how the sensations are also changing. So first, in a particular part of your body, you may be having a painful sensation, but while traveling at the next trip in your body, you may not observe the same sensation there in that particular part of body. It would be a different sensation. So sensations come and go. Similarly, mental states, focusing on mental states, that is, at present I am having a kind of angry mood, but you have to realize that, okay, that mood also is temporary. It is not permanent. So at present I am having a particular type of feeling. I am having a particular type of sentiment or emotion, and that also will come and go. So in this way, gradually you reduce your attachment to various kinds of things. That is how it functions. And of course, it is not a short journey. I mean, personally, I can say that I am only a sadhaka. I am not a siddha. I am not a guru. So I cannot tell anyone that this is the ultimate truth and so on and so forth. I am a student in this area also. So as a co-student, I can just tell you that these are my experiences. Maybe you can have similar experiences.
Yes. In fact, we have tendency to learn more from our peers than from Guru. Yes. This is very nice, sir. And I like the pattern which normally we find in the Buddhist tradition. If we look at the Puggal Pannati, so there we find classification of almost 400 types of personality. Now, the purpose for classification of this much number is to enable a participant of Vipassana or any Samath meditation is to first identify that we are at this level. Unless we identify that our level of awareness is matching with this classification, it won't be, it would be a kind of journey in dark by hit and trial that we may succeed. But this text provides a clear classification of personality, and then accordingly, I believe that the Abhidhamma tradition provides mechanism, and then later of Yogacara tradition we progress from there. So I think the Buddhist prescription would be that it's not a uniform or just one level of beginning point. One can begin wherever one is. And this breathe observation is something which is the simplest technique available to any level of awareness, I should say.
Yes.
Irrespective of our other. So this is very nice technique. And normally I find that every system of yogic practices involves the role of breathing and focus on breathing, of course, in different ways. I saw in the Osho meditation technique, they have what is called very unsystematic breathing in the beginning. And when I was asked to do that, then I was not comfortable with that. Similarly, the dancing, etc. moments, I didn't find myself comfortable with that also. So then I found that yes, my kind of consciousness cannot be engaged in such activities, may not be those activities beneficial to me. And therefore, I find the Puggal Pannati classification, and then accordingly the suggestions that, okay, if you are at this level, you can go. And in the present situation, Vishwanath is here, he is teaching in a management institute. If he can take up this project that, okay, this much number of personality would have different levels of temperament, and I don't find that much exhaustive classification in any of the traditions. Be it the classification of the chittavrittis, that is wonderful. We find more than 50 chittavrittis and then 395 type of personalities. And if we associate these 52 and 395, it would be a great number, a great data to analyze the temperament of different beings and levels of awareness. And accordingly, we can use it for spiritual practices. And of course, it has possibility to be used in marketing also, but that I don't want to recommend. But certainly for spiritual growth, these are very interesting prescriptions and suggestions. So do we have any more questions? We had, I think, very nice session. It is already now going to be 1:30. So we can take up last question if any of you have.
My take on this given forum is really, I would appreciate really the way it has been arranged, and particularly the way each and everything is arranged is really great. It's quite enriching by Gokhale sir, the talk in between, and my senior Professor Anil Tewari and Professor Madhu Mangal also done a wonderful job, I found really. But though there was some technical glitches here and there, but I could follow each and everything what sir was talking about. And it's quite, really, I felt very enriching for me. I was it was difficult for me to attend today because there was a meeting. So I shared with one of my colleagues that there is another thing, so I cannot come. So it was really, sir, great feeling, really great kind of satisfaction that I had today.
Thank you, Vishnu. Thank you for joining. In fact, it was a long time. We did not have any such interaction, so it was nice that you could attend, and you raised very nice question also. And I hope you are satisfied with Professor Gokhale's remarks.
Yeah, exactly, because he put from different perspective.
Yes. In fact, this way of conducting the session was suggested by none other than Professor Gokhale. He said that I don't want to lecture.
No, sir. This is a I would say very innovative, wonderful way, because in between he clarified many points what Madhu said, and Anil also said something. So in a continuation to the clarification, he little exploded many things.
Yes.
So that was something great, way to look into various problems which are there in Indian philosophy.
Yes. It's very enriching for all of us.
Yeah. Wonderful. Actually, sir, I didn't have an opportunity to attend any of your sessions primarily previously, but today I thought, let's see that what exactly is going to be discussed, and I felt so happy really, and it is a great day for me.
Great. So I think let us call the session off, and Dr. Madhu, can you hear me? Yeah, so I request you to kindly offer a vote of thanks and express our gratitude towards Professor Gokhale. Yes.
So on behalf of School of Philosophy and Culture from Maharashtra University, this is part of the lecture series to be organized under ICPR sponsored study circle. So which is meant to be that we are supposed to invite scholars, could be not necessarily philosophy, but from other disciplines also, and discuss the theme which we have decided is related to the knowledge system, Indian knowledge systems, the spiritual and epistemological. We use epistemological
empowerment.
Sorry, forget empowerment of people. Doesn't matter how many people join, but I think certainly those who joined and those who could hear, Professor must have realized that I see in his face the serenity. So he not only told us about the concepts and with the very lucidity and clarity that he spoke about, also consider that why, from where does he get it? I think it is also because he has also not only writing on yoga, but he's also practices yoga. And it doesn't matter what tribe or what physiology or pointed out what point you practice. So his recommendation is to start with Vipassana, and you all know that Vipassana is very much acclaimed and accepted method of technique to understand yourself, your mind, and bring your mind to calm your mind and improve your concentration and attention span. And there are a lot of studies from the point of view of brain and neuroscience research, neuroscience research is being done, and a lot of research has already been done. So we thank Professor for two reasons. First, to also clarifying all the questions patiently and with all the disturbances and technical disturbances, and also writing this book. He must be thanked and congratulated because he has also opened the doors for the uninitiated. In one single book, he has opened up the two disciplines, two schools of thought, and which are so important for individual transformation. And it is all said that sanskaras, or one understanding is that you are exposed to good or bad situations depending upon the kind of sanskaras that they affect. And this theme is there in the must be in the Buddhist tradition as well. So when you have good karmas taking effect in your life, you are exposed to good things. And supposedly it is our great karma has taken effect that you are exposed to this book and it came for mind to organize this. Otherwise, we could have simply kept the book and would not have thought of it. So we learned a lot, and most importantly, is at least I downloaded all the references that Professor has made. God knows how many lifetimes I would try to read that all, but I'm very much interested to read all that in Abdhamma Kosh Bhashya or whatever Professor references that Professor has made. So whatever we do, but certainly it has triggered sort of a lot of curiosity about the content, and he has done it in a single book. Not that you don't, that you have to read everything. Even if you read the book, you've got a lot of insights in that. And we thank the University Administration also for allowing this study cycle to all the support from Vice Chancellor and Research Office to help us to organize such things, whatever administrative support they require. ICPR, obviously the speaker, the professor, the author of the book, and certainly he is the person whom we can turn for advice anytime. And we must make use of his not only intellectual but his spiritual experiences. And we should separately organize if he whatever close to something which is more practical, the personal and practical aspects of the Buddhist meditation. If he would like to just describe it to us, the steps, whether it is Satipatthana or whatever, so that we can get more benefit from it. A separate session, hopefully. Without this interaction. And of course, the participants who could opportunity. And again, I would thank Professor, and I would like to thank. I would have had some other Sharma could not join due to definitely some technical problem. That's me. And I thank Professor Biswat and all the other people joined who have left or who are still here or who could not join also possibly wanted to. And also Dr. Tewari, who is always ready. Almost he has no resistance to any good thing that you offer. He's always ready to support, and because he is our bridge to Professor's connection. Without him, we could not have achieved this, organized this. So I thank everybody, and especially again Professor, and all the great souls who have, for the benefit of humankind, out of compassion, have codified or recorded their experiences and techniques for the future generation, 2,000-year-old, more than that, so that we still benefit from that if we can access it. And so that the professor like are very, very important. Again, a very important bridge to the tradition, the past tradition. So I thank everybody once and for all, and I hope we meet again. Thanks. This is from my side. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you, Madhu. Thank you very much. I also express my gratitude to Professor Gokhale for being kind to join the session and allow us to discuss his book. And I hope this book will be well received by academia as well as laity in the same spirit. So I thank you all for being kind to be with us for more than 2 hours. So
I also thank you all, okay, the exposure that you have given.
Sir, it's our pleasure. In fact, we enjoyed your book and we used to discuss, and we will keep on discussing the points which you have raised in your book. And we will have further occasions to conduct such sessions and seek your blessings.
When you are writing a book like this, and you are waiting for this. We knew that you were writing somewhere. We knew that you were writing a book on this balance between these two, and we were eagerly waiting. And when we saw that it is published, we were really happy. We were really grateful.
We could guess it. In fact, when he was in Sarna, we could guess it that there is something significant going to happen. So that was our expectation, and it was well satisfied by your contribution. So thank you, sir, very much. Thank you, Isu. See you sometime again. Thank you, Madhu, Ajay, and Karan, Virenji. Thank you all. So, I take your leave now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
धन्यवाद.
Namaste.